Hey, what's up, party people of the SFL? Welcome and a very special thank you for tuning in to episode 2 of Axis Live. I'm your host, Dave Axis, and we have another amazing panel for you tonight. But before I introduce them, I want to thank each and every one of you who tuned in Tuesday night for the kickoff show of Axis Live. We hit nearly 80 viewers, and your feedback has been tremendous. So from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you. I also want to thank again the panelists from Tuesday night, Mike, Jeff, Thomas, Frank, and Eagle. You guys were awesome. I also want to show some love to my sponsors real quick before we get started. Bad Boy Custom Rods for all your freshwater, saltwater, and fly fishing needs. And then, of course, Trick Apparel, who takes care of all my hats and t-shirts for me. I'm very thankful to both of them and grateful for them taking a chance on me from the get-go. And I actually have a couple other sponsors inquiring, so we'll see what happens with that. A quick programming note. I've added a couple little things to the show since Tuesday night. So first, you probably noticed the countdown counter before the show. Kind of give you a little idea of when we'll actually kick things off each night. Also, you'll notice in the top left-hand corner, looks like Eddie's maybe got some background noise or something, but what you'll see is in the top left-hand corner of your screen tonight, we'll be highlighting the person's name of whomever is speaking. That came from a couple of you saying that it would be nice to know who's talking each time when they talk. And then lastly, we have a new segment of the show that will debut at around the bottom of the hour. So stay tuned for that as well. Also, real quick, if you guys have questions or comments or whatever for me or the panelists, put them in chat and we will try to get to them. We'll try to get to as many as possible. Also, ladies and gentlemen, we have some breaking news from the SFL tonight that one of our guests will be sharing at the end of the show this evening. So if you want to know what the breaking news of the SFL is tonight, make sure you stay tuned until the end of the show. So with that being said, let's get to the introductions of our panelists tonight. Our first one, we have the owner from the Lone Star Glory, new owner, co-owner of the Lone Star Glory, former player for Vancouver out of Denton, Texas, Charles Doherty. Sorry, Charles, I almost messed up your name there. We have the Hall of Famer and owner of the Arizona Scorpions, Eddie Gage from Queen Creek, Arizona. He's with us tonight. We also have Dwayne Schindler, co-owner of the St. Louis Gladiators since like season 8 or 9 from Delray Beach, Florida. And then last, certainly not least, we have the GM and linebacker from the Las Vegas Fury, Slyn Shady from Stoke-on-Trent, Staffordshire, England. So, fellas, thank you for being on the show tonight. How are you guys all doing? And make sure you guys are unmuted as well. How are you guys doing tonight?
Dave.
Good. Dave. Good.
Yep.
Very good, Dave.
Yep.
Great.
Good. Glad to have all you guys on here. And as long as you guys can hear me okay?
Perfectly.
Okay, good.
Good.
Somebody, I think one of you might have your Twitch not muted because we are getting some feedback. So if you guys can work on that, that would be good. Hey, to the listeners, how do we sound? I want to get some feedback here real quick before we get in. Okay, yeah, I'm getting feedback from one of you guys. But anyway, before we dive into dissecting the draft from the other night, let me ask you guys. How has your off season been going? And how would you compare it to other off seasons? And I will start with Dwayne.
This offseason, I think that had to deal with more more free agency than he had to with limited agents than over the last couple of seasons. And that's for a number of issues. Everybody aware of Johnny's situation, but we actually knew that we were going to have about people leaving in free agency before the season was even over with. So if all that going on, we've been focused pretty heavily over the last couple months looking at the aft. But we're feeling really positive about what we were able to bring in on defense on the free agency side. Then we just got to build next generation of gladiator offense.
Okay, great. Charles, how about you? How has this offseason been going for you? Especially, starting up a new team, being in a different role.
Well, it's been exciting and daunting at the same time. We started out with basically Wally and myself in the locker room. So we do have 2 expansion teams, but I think we could probably consider us as honorary expansion teams.
Right.
But we've done a lot of work. We've brought a lot of folks to the locker room and free agency. I'm really excited about the caliber of the guys we brought in, and I'm actually as excited for the draft to bring in even more great guys.
Awesome. Okay, Eddie, how about you? Eddie Gage. Did we lose Eddie?
I'm here.
Okay. How was your off season going, bro? And you know what? Also, do me a favor and contrast it. Now that you've had one season of being an owner under your belt, how is this season different from last season?
My off season went pretty good. We lost a couple of guys because of the new subscription model, but we did pretty good replacing them. I couldn't ask for a better turnout in free agency. I owe a lot of that credit to my GMs, Ashley Jackson and Monica Naka.
Yeah.
Ashley actually brought EJ the Q out of retirement. EJ, a blessing for us because without him, we would have had a big hole to fill in line. We got Iverson Gamble at the corner. His bill isn't as quite as good as Tanner's was. He left us to be a GM in London, but it shouldn't take too long to get him up to speed, and we'll be all set.
Okay, awesome.
From Tulsa, we got Jacob, and he's looking pretty good in my places so far. There's some things I have to work with, but otherwise, he's looking pretty good, and he progresses because we're practice, and I'm looking forward to a great draft for the first. We'll be sitting back watching, but on round 5, 6, and 7, we'll be back without grinding and trying to get guys to feel some roles for us.
Awesome. Hey, Eddie, you're actually going in and out a little bit, so can you double check your feed? Hey, Slyn, I'm getting ready to go to you, so hopefully you've got your Twitch. I think you were the one that was echoing, so I'm going to come back to you right now and see if you're good to go.
Yeah, I've got rid of my Twitch now, so.
Okay, perfect. All right. I'm still getting an echo though. For some reason. You how was your off season this season with Las Vegas as a GM versus being with London as a GM and a co-owner before?
Oh, the contrast is massive. One, coming to Vegas, having to get on with the new staff. They've been great, by the way. John and Merrick, Tom Raman, amazing. The whole new sort of outlay of the league with so many more positions to fill and free agents to sign, and sheer size of the rookie draft. The contrast is ridiculous. It's like, I don't know, it just shows how much the league has grown. I was almost learning how to do it again. I was asking so many basic questions at the start because it's just advanced so much in the last 2. So yeah, it's been a massive learning curve, and if in one word, it's just been hectic, absolutely hectic.
Yeah, I can attest to that too. Being in a new GM role myself, just barely, I don't know, just for a number of weeks. Let's dive into Tuesday night's show. First question I have for you guys, and I'll start with Charles on this one. What stood out the most for you from our mock panelists Tuesday night from that show?
Wow. The first thing that jumped out at me was the amount of work that they did.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was incredible. I mean, I'm looking at what Mike did, and Jeff and Eagle and Frank and Thomas, and I mean, it's incredible. I mean, the amount of time they put into it, the graphics.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like something you'd see in Sports Illustrated.
Yeah, they did a tremendous job. They were like you said, so prepared and so in depth, and they had answers for everything I asked of them. Eddie Gage, what about you?
I think Charles beat me to the punch. And I want to comment on Jeff's mock draft. Not only did he complete a mock draft, but he went on and explained why they picked, which I thought was awesome.
Yeah. Dwayne, what about you? What did you think about Tuesday night's show and the mock panel?
I found it really interesting because I know that the majority of people that do the mock drafts throughout the my time in the SFL, they're brand new, and the amount of research that went in was amazing, and I don't know if that's always been the case past, but I always felt like you could take mock drafts for what they were, but you couldn't put too much stock in them. And these guys basically had a lot of work into it, and for somebody that's only been around for a few months in the league, they've all really put together some pretty in-depth analysis.
Yeah, you know what? Let me ask you a quick follow-up question, Dwayne. You said you've been the owner in St. Louis since season 8 or 9. Do you remember a season where the mock drafts were this in depth?
I've seen one or two, and I think the season. I don't think I've ever seen a season where come anywhere close to being accurate. I looked at one from 2 seasons ago, and out of 60 some picks, they got 3 of the players right. They got maybe one played the same position, was drafted by the same team as on the mock draft, and I think you're probably going to see at least a few picks that are spot on each round from all these mock drafts.
Right. Okay. All right, Slyn, let's see if we can go to you one more time. What stood out the most from you from the mock panelists on Tuesday night, Slyn Shady?
Passion.
Mm-hmm.
I think from my perspective, someone who's done mock drafts in the past for the beat writing, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of research. Whether you're accurate or not, it doesn't. The amount of effort and time that goes in, it stays the same. And in the past, we've had writing mock drafts, but we've never had rookies come in and take it upon themselves to produce these mock drafts, which, I mean, looking at them, I've got them all in front of me now. They're so polished, so well thought out, and so well done, that when you spoke to them on Tuesday, that passion just shone through, and I can only applaud them.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Let's get into this now. There were a lot of things that we got to the other night. We talked about the defensive line situation. We talked about quarterbacks and halfbacks. We talked about number 1 picks and surprises. I want to start off with a few things that we did not get to. First and foremost, since it was brought to our attention, is we didn't really get to the defensive backs. And so since you are a Hall of Fame defensive back, Eddie Gage, I want to start with you on this question. Is you can answer it either way. How you saw the DBs broken down in the mock drafts, or how you feel they're breaking down in your own draft. But give me some feedback about where you think most of the DBs are going to be drafted. And, do you see a lot getting drafted? Do you see only a few getting drafted? It seems to me like there's quite a few holes to fill. Give me an overview of how you feel about the defensive backfield of the draft.
Wow. To answer that question, you would have to get into the minds of these coaches and GMs. And unfortunately, I don't have that kind of intel, and they definitely aren't going to show it. But one thing that I noticed last season, Jacksonville, I believe, came into the season with, 6 DBs. And so much so it was talked about during the draft in Boston last season. I'm not sure with these expanded rosters just how much teams are going to try to follow that pattern of behavior that Jacksonville displayed with all the defensive backs.
Mm-hmm.
But I was talking about this very issue with the owner of Florida, Mighty RX, a couple of times since then. And in my opinion, the defense of Jacksonville lost them that game in the playoffs versus Vancouver last season because they were trying to, win with those guys on the field. And in my opinion, not saying I'm right, because that's not what I'm trying to say. But in my opinion, they took a wrong approach trying to keep all those guys on the field because they were trying to stop the run and the pass and was unable to do so given that method of play. And as Mighty RX said, if they were gonna go out, they were gonna go out with all their bullets, meaning they were gonna keep them all on the field. And I thought that was the wrong approach to take versus that particular team, and it cost them that playoff game. Now they had some unfortunate things happen in the end, but I don't know. We'll see. I mean, with these expanded rosters, I'm sure we'll see more teams taking on additional defensive backs, but just have to wait and see how it plays out.
Okay. And then, Charles, you had one of the top running backs in all of the SFL, and you chose to retire him and come back with a cornerback, Lee Pato. And so you have some DB experience from when you were at Atlanta, and you're going to be playing DB this season. So what do you think is what do you think about the defensive backfield of the draft this season?
I think it's strong. I mean, actually, I was a little surprised looking at the mock drafts. I know teams have a lot of gaps with in terms of defensive linemen, but I was a little surprised that it's the most in the first round from a cornerback standpoint was 2 by Jeff and 2 by Frank and 2 by Thomas and 1 safety apiece between Mike, Jeff, and Eagle. I would have thought that might have been a little bit higher,
right?
Because this league is pass happy, and I think you need to have people there on the back end to keep them out of the end zone. And I was just a little surprised. I mean, I looking at the teams, that they need to get some defensive linemen. Just counting up the numbers. But I was just surprised that these 5 guys came up with such a heavy emphasis on the line.
And so do you think because it's such a pass-heavy league is why we saw so many defensive backs re-signed and signed in the free agent period as opposed to defensive linemen? Because a lot of teams still need a lot of defensive linemen.
Yeah, I mean, true. I don't really know the answer to that. I'm sorry, but I just think that as a next season, the only perspective I can give you is next season. I mean, I would want to keep my defensive linemen and my cornerbacks. I mean, and safeties. I mean, you want to keep the guys that are on your team as long as you possibly can. So I don't know if there's any actual cause around your comment. I mean, why defensive linemen are leaving.
Right.
I don't know. That's hard to put a finger on it.
Okay. Slyn, what do you think about the defensive backfield for this draft coming up?
I think I don't think we'll see that many drafted. It's looking around the league, I think you previously said, that cornerback strong and the safeties, a lot of players have been re-signed, and you see teams loading up on 5 defensive backs. I think there's a couple like Vancouver who've got 6, and I think it's one of those positions where I don't know why, it just seems that the retention is quite good around the league. So I think you've got to really stand out, much like with the quarterbacks and the running backs.
Right.
You've got to really stand out to be considered a sort of a top pick. Is in that position. So if I can think of anyone who I imagine getting drafted as a defensive back early, would be someone like Thomas Smith, for instance.
Right.
So I think I don't think they're going to be, compared to, like we said, defensive line, I don't think that many are going to go.
Okay. So let's go to Dwayne. Dwayne, where do you? I noticed that in the off season, you guys loaded up on defense, and you've basically saved the draft to fill up your offense. What do you think about the defensive backfield? I don't think you're going to actually be drafting a defensive back in this draft, but how do you feel about the rookies that are coming out in this draft class?
Well, nickel base formations are getting to be more popular, and I think what's the real game changer has been for both the defense and the offense is we're going to 20 player rosters, where for the longest time we were at 12 player rosters. Opens up a lot more options as to what kind of formations, schemes that you can run, and how flexible you can in those schemes. I think 4 or 5 defensive backs is the norm in the 12, because you would hurt yourself if you went with 5 or 6 by on other spots on the defense, or you'd be taking away spots offensive firepower. So now that's not such a thing. Value is one of the things I think that there might be a little bit of a lack of in this draft as far as max value type of players, but you can also build up a defensive back really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you're going to probably see a lot of them go 3rd, 4th round, and I would not be too surprised if people start picking up their 5th back in the supplemental draft.
Okay. And so you mentioned something in your answer. Do you like the idea of having more roster spots or less roster spots? Is it easy? I mean, it's obviously, it takes more time and effort to manage the more people you have. Would you rather see the roster spots explode like up to 30, or would you like to see it go back down to 12, or do you like the happy medium of like a 17 to 20?
Or it to go to 30 or beyond that. I mean, I think it's 42 spots total All Pro Football 2K8. That's the biggest you can possibly do it. I think we're going to have to figure out a way of getting everybody involved on the field in order to do that, and that's something we're still working on. I think that 17 allowed us to do more the style of defense wanted to do, and still put together a very formal offense. 20 is a system other simulation leagues using All Pro Football 2K8 use 20-man rosters. I would like to honestly see it stay there for a few seasons, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Okay. Eddie, let me ask you a follow-up question on this as well, since you being the Hall of Fame DB that you are. we see a lot of teams going to 5 DBs, like I think you mentioned earlier, and I think there's 1 or 2 teams that have even gone 6 DBs. Do you find going 5 or 6 DBs in this league is excessive?
No, not at all. Come on, man. Defense win games.
Oh, here we go. It's always here we go.
I mean, let's just let's be honest here. I myself, I have 3 corners, one free safety, 1 strong safety, and if the draft doesn't, since I draft so late, if I don't get the positions that I would prefer, that I'm aiming for, then I'm willing to take a shot at grabbing even another one,
Right.
Another corner or a free safety. Haven't quite made up my mind yet on that. I got some time to contemplate on that, but no, because teams like Chicago, who like this, with a run and shoot style offense, Atlanta, so to speak, not quite so much as Chicago, but yeah, those teams put in my mind first and foremost. They like to get the ball downfield, and sometimes you can never have enough DBs. You got to think about injuries and all that stuff too. Plus, some guys may even decide to move on, and so you can use the season prior to them leaving to develop that 5th or 6th DB, or to replace the gentleman that may be retiring. So, no, you can never have enough DBs, in my opinion. And the same thing goes for defensive linemen as well.
Okay, so let me ask this next question for Slyn Shady then, because we talked exhaustively about the defensive line situation with the panel the other night, and now we've discussed the defensive backs. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of teams that need linebackers, and so Slyn, do you see that this linebacking core coming in this draft is deep, and we're going to see a lot of linebackers not get drafted, kind of like the way we're seeing quarterbacks and halfbacks? Or do you think maybe it's not too deep and it's probably good that there's only a few spots anyway?
I'd say it was pretty deep. There's a lot of players who are currently linebackers who I've spoken to and would happily take in the 3rd round, between the 3rd and the 7th rounds, who are great guys or great girls. And I think with linebacker, I think there seems to be a lot of retention around the league at linebacker. I don't know whether it's just a certain mindset of person decides they want to create a linebacker. But it just seems that I feel like since my journey through the league, since season 9, linebackers have always been sort of if a player is going to stay with a team for a long time, it's more than often the linebackers, and I'm not sure why, but the rookie linebackers I've spoken to, the ones that have reached out especially, I've been really impressed with, and there's a few that I'm definitely looking at to potentially looking at their secondary positions or maybe getting them in the supplemental draft.
That's an interesting point. Charles, do you have anything to say about the linebacking core in this draft coming up?
Well, I mean, I'll just make a general statement. I mean, we're talking about we're evaluating players at their different positions, but I think across the board, from a rookie standpoint, I mean, we're deep in every position. I mean, we've got great people. I mean, from my standpoint, from Fort Worth, from Lone Star, I want to get the best people in my locker room as possible. And in every position, I mean, we've got so many quality rookies that can step up and do that. So, I mean, whatever position they play, I mean, I think we've got such a depth of quality players out there in our pool.
Hopefully that wasn't a Freudian slip, and I don't get to see Charles to Fort Worth confirmed from Eddie Gage later or something.
They're trying to sign pseudo, but they don't really know the whole way it works.
Awesome. All right, so I'm gonna move into another direction in a moment, but I mentioned at the beginning of the show that we have a new segment that we're gonna test out here on the show, and it is actually called "What Does the Fox Say?" And what we're going to have to do around the bottom of the hour for every show, we're going to have Fox Highwind come on and ask the panel a question. And he has just jumped on the air. Fox, I see you're muted, so you can go ahead and mute yourself. First of all, before you ask your question, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate you letting me be on the show.
And what is your question for our panelists?
How are you guys doing tonight? I'll take that as a good. Okay.
I was like, I hope that's not your question.
Great, Fox.
No, that's not it. So, okay, guys, let's face it. Everyone wants to be drafted, obviously. And everyone has their own personality and pizzazz. You want to be contacted by rookies, and you look for people who are active. However, at some point, does contacting you become annoying? And does pizzazz turn into an attitude? And if so, by your personal standards, where do you draw that line at?
I'm going to start with Dwayne on this one. Dwayne, go ahead and answer that one first.
Well, I think there's a really razor thin line between being eager and being overly eager and excited. I always try to keep in mind age of the person that I'm talking to, and also how excited I was to hear from owners and coaches when I was looking to become a player. I think I personally I have more problems with players that tell me stuff like I've seen the history of your team, and I don't know if you guys are a good fit for me, or how many touches can. That's annoying because talking with somebody who just joined weeks ago, and it's like I don't feel like I have the need to explain all that. I'm looking for you to sell yourself to me because. Right. It's a buyer's market. I'm not looking for you to tell me what's wrong with my team.
Okay. Slim Shady, your first year as a GM in Vegas, but you're no stranger to this process. You were a GM and a co-owner in London. So what do you think about Fox's question, and what's your answer to that?
I think being English, I walk around in a perpetual state of annoyance anyway. But there are two things. There are two things that I guess get on my wick. Which reaching out at any stage is great. Love it. I've got no problem with it. But there's two things. If you reach out and ask for advice, then don't take said advice. Then come back with the same question. That's quite annoying.
Right.
And then if you reach out to me and advertise player, but go stats heavy and tell me about how you're you've got the most reception in the SFLM, and that clearly sort of signifies that I must draft you, then it shows to me that you're not really understanding what the league is about, which it isn't annoying, but it just turns me off straight away.
Right. Okay.
To be brutal.
Got it. Okay. Eddie Gage, how about you?
Personally, Dave, I like the guys who take the time out to explain to me about themselves. I'll give you a perfect example. One thing I don't like is when guys send me a DM with a quick one-liner, hey, I'm your quarterback of the future. I'm going to throw 30 TDs and 2 interceptions. I'm going to be league MVP. You should draft me now. Otherwise, it'd be a big mistake. I get so many of those, I don't even bother replying to them. But when I get the people, the players who you can tell are hungry, they do their research, tell you about themselves, tell you how they found the league, tell you, why they think they'll be a good fit for your team, tell you a bit about themselves, their history. I'll give you a prime example. I'm not going to say the gentleman's name. I had a guy send me a long DM. Told me he did everything but gave me a social security number. He told me his name, where he was from, how he found the league. He included a big Word document of his history, and how he felt he could be an asset to our team. He then went on to say, hey, you guys, your defense last season was electric. I don't know who your defensive coordinator is, but that guy he's awesome. I guess he didn't realize that was me, but he was awesome. But however, your offense struggled, and I'm not claiming to be the best, but if I'm selected to get on your team, I would love to buy the game and perhaps help you guys in that aspect. He wasn't telling me he was going to be our defensive offensive coordinator, but he was telling me he was willing to put in the work to help to become that coordinator.
Right.
And all that said, he immediately caught my eye, and he's been penciled on my draft board ever since. I think he'll be long gone by the time I draft in the 5th round, but players like that are the guys that you want on your team.
Got it. Okay. Charles, what's your answer to Fox's question?
I'm still trying to get over the image of Fox with that mask on. It's going to haunt me. So as far as Fox's question, I mean, being at the end, I think most of the guys before me filled in a lot of the blanks for me. But from my standpoint as a new owner, I welcome anyone reaching out saying they want to play for Lone Star. And like Eddie said, I'd like to learn a little bit more about them outside of the player, because I think for Lone Star we want to make a fit in the locker room. And from an annoyance standpoint, it might be strong to say it's annoying, but for people or rookies that have been going through the check-in process for a very long time, knowing who, or maybe not knowing who we've signed as free agents. I mean, we're pretty full at defensive line and linebacker. So, somebody coming out and saying, "Hey, sign me as a linebacker." I really don't have any room,
right.
And it kind of shows that maybe they might not have checked the free agent wire. But I understand that, and again, as a new owner, I welcome anyone reaching out to me. I understand I was a rookie before, and I am in no way, shape, or form the caliber of the guys that are the rookie class now. So I'm not even going to try and tell them what they're doing right and wrong, because clearly they're light speed ahead of me.
Right, and there's
when I was in their position.
Yeah, and there's a balance there, right? If you're new to the server, number one, it can be very overwhelming and convoluted when you first jump on and you're not sure what to do. But at the same time, those are the people that they're asking the questions, but sometimes they're asking the wrong questions. They're more concerned with, what do I have to do to build my player, instead of, what are the proper steps in order to get myself involved in the league. So I appreciate all of you guys answering Fox's question, and thank you again, Fox, for jumping on and doing that for me. We've discussed a lot of positions on Tuesday night, a lot of position groups. We discussed some position groups this evening as well. And one particular family that seems to cover all the position groups is the Harrell family. And I've seen some of the Harrells drafted on these mock drafts in the first round, some in the second round, some till later. I think they might even have enough family members to almost have a whole, at least offense or defense on their own. Have you guys had any interaction with the Harrells? And let's do rapid fire on this. Let's do it quick. We don't need to spend a lot of time on it. Just want to know if you've had any interaction with the Harrell family and what your experience has been. And I'm going to start with you, Eddie Gage. If you unmute yourself.
Laura Harrell was on my team last season. She played as a non-contract fullback. She was great. She's not the most active, but she's always supportive. Win or lose, she's always, she doesn't talk much in the locker room, but she was always sending me a DM telling me, hey, our team did great, despite the loss or what have you. She was always positive no matter what. David Harrell is another guy I contacted a bit here and there. But yeah, those Harrells, they're I call them crew thick because they're everywhere.
Yeah, they are. Does anybody know, and I'll just open this up to everybody, how many Harrells are actually in the league? Anybody know the answer to that?
73.
If anybody else in chat knows how many Harrells we have, maybe some of the Harrells are listening and they can answer the question while we go to Charles, actually, since you were talking already, let's just go to Charles.
So I had the fortune of having Nick Rhodes and Beth Harrell on Vancouver as non-contract players last season, and great people. The whole family in general was just outstanding, and any Harrell you sign to your team, it's going to be a win.
I mean, you basically have a chance to get one at any position as it is, right?
Yeah, I mean every position except for maybe long snapper.
Yeah, well, I think we're the only ones drafted a long snapper anyway.
Yep,
so
that's true.
yeah. Oh, my bad. It says, wait, are we recording?
No.
Okay, good. All right, good. Dwayne, how about you, buddy?
I think that anytime you can get family members or friends or other people involved in the league, especially when you're in a situation like we are now, with a lot of spots to fill, it can build some camaraderie on your team and improve the atmosphere in the locker room. We've spoken to several of them, and I think it would all make great additions to anybody's team.
Awesome. Okay, and then Slyn Shady, have you had any interaction with the Harrell family?
I've barely spoken to any Harrell, so I feel like I've been missing out. I feel like I feel neglectful. I think at Las Vegas we've already got 3 or 4 Ramons, so I think if we drafted every Harrell, we could literally have 2 families to make up the entire squad.
Well, is it Mexico City that has a bunch of family members too?
The Dags with the other Power
Dags.
family.
Wow. So, I mean, if you took those 3 families, you could literally fill up an entire roster for one team. That's awesome. Okay, so, all right, moving on. On Tuesday night's show, there was a lot of talk about Brody Gulch going number 1. I think 4, if I'm not mistaken, 4? Yeah, 4 of the 5 mock drafts had him going number 1. I think the other number 1 was Ross Napoli, and even the one that had Ross Napoli also had Gulch, and I think it was David Harrell going in the first 4 picks. The top half of the first round seems to be defensive heavy. I'm wondering, do you think the rule, that whole third round to second round rule, has played into pushing back some of these higher caliber players, if you will, quarterbacks, halfbacks, or guys with more check-ins, because teams are going to try to steal them in the third round as opposed to take them in the first or second round? And I'll go to Dwayne first on that question.
I mean, I know there's been a huge amount of debate about that among owners. But, there's always a lot of draft day surprises. I think I've seen a lot of trends where if somebody starts picking, there's a certain position, there'll be a run on them. They had a run on fullbacks last season. I think that it's kind of going to be based on what's available out there. We saw a lot of the offensive weapons be taken up in free agency. I think that it actually factor into why defense might be selected. But then there's teams that need a lot of pieces on offense still. And the first 2 rounds are definitely where you're going to find your value there.
Okay. Slyn Shady, how about you?
I think one thing is there's more defensive positions to fill, and it makes sense that if teams have got more positions to fill, then at a specific side of the ball, then they're going to start with that side of the ball. Although, if you look at the secondary positions, the offensive positions like wide receiver and tight end are absolutely stacked. You could wait till the 4th round and probably get a really quality person who has that as their secondary position. So, it's almost like the safe bet to try and fill up on defense and just get because at the end of the day, we're all looking for great people, wherever position they are. So if you can get a great person at a position that's a need, and then you can still get a great person at a position at a secondary position later on offense, you might as well go defense first.
Right. Eddie, what do you think about that?
I think Slim Shady hit it on the head on both points. Number one, there are more positions on defense to be filled in comparison to offense. And two, if you look at the SFL website in comparison to the front office channel, which most people don't have access to, the secondary builds have a lot of value and talent on the offensive side of the ball, where you got a lot of people who want to play wide receiver. They want all those diva spots.
Right.
And, there's going to be a lot of players taken there. But I think the first couple of rounds are going to be defensive heavy.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with you. Charles, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I may not be answering the question, but my focus as an owner is I'm paying attention to what the three last champions are doing in the draft, being Atlanta, Denver, and Florida, and looking at Mike and Jeff's and Eagles and Frank's and Thomas's mock draft. Obviously, everybody's expecting Atlanta to get a quarterback, but the one thing that sticks out in my mind is Thomas Smith saying that Florida is going to be drafting a running back, Connor Weston. I mean, if Florida goes back to the a two halfback, fullback and running back combination, I think that's a shot across the bow for the rest of the SFL.
There you go. Okay, I'm going to ask another rapid fire question. This time, I just need a real quick answer. I'm going to go to each of you real fast. When splitting hairs on players, what's more important to you, the person or the player? The person, the human being, and what they can offer off the field, and their personality, what have you, and what they offer in chat, or the player build, the value, etc. I'm going to start with Eddie Gage. Person or player?
The person, without a doubt.
Charles?
Person.
Dwayne?
1,000,000,000% person.
And Slyn Shady?
Full house, person.
Wow, look at that. We got four of a kind here. Dwayne, you mentioned something in your last answer about surprises. So starting with Charles, actually, I want to ask, who do you think, or what do you think will be the surprise of this draft starting on Sunday? Surprise.
Huh. I would if I'm going back to the premise of the call, looking at the mock drafts here, is if as many offensive linemen in the first and second round get drafted. I mean, we're looking at a couple in both rounds. I mean, I think that would be pretty high, and I would be expecting most of them to be taken in the supplemental.
Okay, Dwayne, what about you?
I don't know how much of a surprise it is, but I think there's going to be a lot of people projected to go in the first round that are going to wait. And I think you're going to see one or two people projected to go in the fourth round go first or second.
Interesting. Okay. Slyn, what about you?
I think there are going to be, like there always is, a couple of players who no one seems to have heard of, who have maybe spoken to one or two teams who are still great players,
right,
but they've just kept themselves on the down low, and they get drafted, and no one had a clue that it was going to happen.
And nobody had no. That's a great point. Eddie Gage, what's the surprise of the draft going to be?
Slim stole my thunder once again. I believe they're going to who are drafted, who are not really active in chat. No one really speaks to them too much. They don't know much about them, and they're gonna get drafted. And guys are gonna be saying, "Who is that guy? I haven't never heard of him. I haven't seen him in chat. Yet he got drafted above me. I don't understand it. Yeah, but it happens all the time."
Yeah, I believe you. I cannot believe this, but we are almost out of time. We've already been going almost an hour, so I want to do one last question with you guys. And I'm going to start with Slyn Shady on this. Was there anything that you wanted to mention or cover that we did not get to tonight?
who all the other teams are drafting, please.
Okay.
Just so I know.
Just okay. Everybody, go ahead and DM your draft boards to Slyn Shady, please. Was that it, Slyn?
sorry. I think, to be honest, I think that means that we've pretty much covered everything that I can think of covering. To be honest,
okay.
I just want to say one final word to the mock creators that again they've done an absolutely fantastic job, and I can't wait for if they can carry on next season with Jeff Gagnon now being head of digital content, whether we can roll it out in a more professional way.
Okay, good. Dwayne, what about you? Is there anything that we did not get to tonight that you were hoping we would, or that you wanted to mention?
I would just recommend to anybody in the rookie draft that just be patient if you don't get your name doesn't get called as early as you hoped, or if you see situations like was said earlier where somebody gets taken, that's kind of a surprise, and then reach out to teams and see what they're thinking and or what possibilities you have with your secondary here. But guys that stand out late like that usually will end up getting drafted. If you don't end up getting drafted, you still have the ability to build more value for the next draft in the minor league. Then you're at least on the field. So don't get too discouraged by that either. And then there's always the secondary draft too.
Right, the supplemental draft. That's a good answer. Eddie Gage, what did you want to say that we didn't get to tonight?
I have two things, if you don't mind. Number one, to piggyback off Dwayne's comment, if you don't find yourself getting drafted in the early rounds, do not panic. People look at these mock drafts and they go, wow, they see me going high in the draft. I really appreciate it. And all of a sudden, your name isn't getting called. Do not panic. But if I were you, I would continue to reach out to these owners and GMs. Their contact information is in the information channel within Discord. They are a moment away from being contacted, and reintroduce yourself to them. Let them know you haven't forgot and you're still interested in playing. Leave options open to possibly play your secondary positions if that's something that you're willing to do. Finally, I'd like to mention that looking at all these mock drafts, I'm disappointed because Mike Twinscrew doesn't have not a single non-contract Scorpion listed on his mock draft. And I'm kind of disappointed in that. I got a couple guys who have 2 players listed, and I'm just trying to figure out what's going on. I mean, I promote these guys on Twitter; they always reaching out, and yet I don't see their name on the mock draft, and I'm really disappointed. I got to reach out and talk to Cam something about this. This is disrespectful.
Okay, Charles, you get the last word on this question. Anything that you wanted to get to tonight that we did not have an opportunity to talk about?
Well, I wanted to lead in and say that I love you, Dave, because I wasn't able to say that in the green room. It was a little uncomfortable.
Well, you tell me that. You tell me that every day anyway, so it's okay.
No, but seriously, Mike and shout out to Mike and Jeff and Eagle and Frank and Thomas. They put a lot of work in this these mock drafts, and I think we should do a review of the actual picks, compare it to what these gentlemen have done, and maybe give like a Mel Kiper award at the end to see who has the best picks.
Oh, there you go. That's nice. Good idea. At the beginning of the show, I mentioned that we might be having some breaking news in the SFL this evening, and that it would be coming from one of our panelists. Have we heard word on that yet, panelists? I'm going to take your silence as a no. Okay, So there will be some breaking news in the SFL. Hopefully it's going to be breaking tonight. If not, then hopefully it will be tomorrow. Speaking of tomorrow, tomorrow is Friday. I'm sorry. The SFLM championship game is tomorrow night, correct? Ottawa and Madison?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
So good luck to both teams, to Ottawa and Madison in the SFL in the very first SFLM minor league championship. I would love to thank my guests. We got Charles, Dwayne, Slyn, and Eddie for being on tonight. I also want to thank my sponsors once again, Bad Boy Custom Rods and Trick Apparel. And a little scheduling programming note for you guys. Just a reminder, this coming up Tuesday is I think round 3 of the SFL draft. So there will not be an Access Live show, but I will be picking things up on Thursday. And that's going to be just going to be an awesome show. And the guests will be Ashley Jackson, Brian Craven, the coach, and Kramer Jackman, 3 of the people who led the way for league content in the SFL. So please tune in for that. And, especially if you're somebody who maybe is thinking about getting into producing some league content for the SFL, that will be a great show for you to listen to from the vets that have done it for a long time. That being said, thank you again for tuning in. Thank you to my panelists. And as always, have a glorious evening, and I will see you at the tees. Eddie Gage, you want to take us home?
All right, drive home safe, everybody.